Stalking and obsessive behaviors are not romantic. They're the beginning of a horror movie. Stalking is one of the strongest predictors for escalating violence, including murder. Not bad boys, pathetic weirdos.
Stalking awareness. If you are being stalked, I want you to be aware of the possibility that your abuser could be wearing a disguise or concealing their face. They could be dressing in different clothes, walking differently, different hairstyles, different colors in hair, wigs, things like that you may normally be like, no, you may normally look over that. Trust your gut feeling, trust patterns. There's no judgment for what I'm about to say, but sometimes, because I've experienced it too, but sometimes if we ignore the possibility of them being in a disguise or something, it can get us harmed or murdered. And it's no fault of our own, obviously. It's just that we need to be aware of that possibility to try to keep ourselves safer. Stalkers, they don't have a normal mindset. They can do just about anything you can imagine. You may think you know your abuser, and I think nobody else knows, your abuser better than you do, but we don't sometimes know everything our abusers are capable of, or the ways that which they will be willing to go about things until they occur. I incorrectly thought that I knew all of his tactics, and I did not. I found out a lot along the way that he was willing to do, and some things that he had done in secret.
Dina Manzo was stalked for years by her ex-husband, Tommy Manzo. Tommy never got over the fact that Dina divorced him after he had spent every year of their marriage cheating on her. So he became absolutely obsessed with tracking the movements of his ex-wife, and for years stalked her and David Canton in order to figure out where they were located so he could have them assaulted. Once in 2015 and once in 2017. And in 2017, he went after Dina physically. Before, it was only David Canton who was hurt, but this time he wanted his ex-wife punished because it was a month before her wedding to David Canton. So in 2017, Dina and David returned to New Jersey for the last time. They go to Adriana Giudice's first communion, and they spend the entire day with the Giudices. According to Lexi, Dina's daughter, Dina was very apprehensive to return to the state, and she was very nervous about going to the communion, and she did not want to leave Teresa's side because she felt safe being with Teresa. But at some point, she had to return to her home because they were going to, I believe, fly out the next day and return to California. They were leaving, so they needed to go back to their condo in Homedale, New Jersey. Homedale is one of the richest areas, and it is not common for crime to happen there because it is crazy wealthy and crazy dark and woodsy. So when Dina and David return to their condo, they are met with two robbers. These men charge at David, grab him, slam him down, tie him up. While they are brutally assaulting him, they grabbed a baseball bat and used it against this man. Dina was also restrained with zip ties. She was punched in the face. She was frightened by these men who were screaming at her. This is what happens when you F with people from Patterson. They were left on the floor, bound, and having their money stolen. Dina's $60,000 engagement ring stolen off of her finger, and they were bloody. Then somehow, by the grace of God, David is able to get out of his zip tie restraints and call 911 and have the police come to the condo, and then they are transported to the hospitals to have their injuries treated. And Tommy's behind all of this, and he once more forced Dina and David to be afraid for their lives because he wanted to pretend to be a gangster. Part 2 coming up.
Stalkers will use DARVO, and a lot of the time when we think and talk about DARVO, the process of reversing the victim and offender and denying and then attacking the victim, right, and framing them as the real problem. Generally speaking, when we talk about DARVO, I think most people connect that to domestic abuse. DARVO is actually a really, really common tactic that's used in stalking. So victims of stalking who have been victimized, stalked, monitored, abused, threatened, all sorts of things have happened to them. it's not uncommon for their perpetrator to then actually report them as the stalker or to report them as the abuser. This gets really complicated, and I actually train police officers. And I was speaking to police officers recently about this, and they were saying that they've never actually had any training on this process of DARVO. And one of the officers in particular said to me that he feels like he can think of multiple cases that he's held in the past where the perpetrator has successfully DARVO'd him and made him believe that the victim of stalking was actually the perpetrator, and it was only later down the line and with experience and on reflection that that officer realised what had happened and that he'd been totally manipulated by the perpetrator. So the reason I think this is important, and this is why I did a whole chapter on DARVO in Click, Stalk, Destroy, the new book that I've written on stalking, is because there are professionals, not just police, but also I would say mental health practitioners, psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, who are being successfully manipulated by perpetrators of stalking, who are contacting them. So contacting mental health wards, contacting doctors, contacting psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, police officers, social workers, and they are framing their victim as the perpetrator. And of course, because the perpetrator is calm, collected, has thought this through, has planned it, and has been doing this for months or years, they're more, I suppose, they come across as more credible, and they come across as more like in control, whereas the victim is very often dysregulated, traumatized, struggling to articulate themselves, can't remember details, is really, really struggling to explain what's happening to them. And so professionals who aren't trained to spot this are being really easily fooled because of the trauma responses of the victim and the DARVO of the perpetrator. So if you're interested in this, you need to read my new book.